Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Marcel. So some interesting things have happened that have allowed me to visualize problems in my life through a different light, kind of see them from a different perspective. You would think that after basically years of making videos and having discussions with people about human nature, that when something goes wrong, I would automatically look towards human factors as to what caused it, but yet I don't. Allow me to explain. When I was young, I was taught by a man who mentored me. He wasn't necessarily like a father figure, more like a grandfather figure. He ran something of a small farm in the hometown where I lived, and he taught me things about being male, about growing stronger and honor and respect that you don't see in this current generation. That's why in a lot of ways I have kind of a traditional mindset, not necessarily romantically speaking, but in just the concept of honor and respect. And kind of a small example of what I'm talking about is that I repair things as opposed to buying new ones. And I'll get to where that plays into the video here in a moment. But one of the things he spoke to me about is a lawnmower that stopped working. And all these people that he knew, I guess this was his personal experience, all these people that he knew came up to this lawnmower and were trying to find ways to fix it, to get it running. You know, one of them was looking at all the wires, and the other one was, checking like the different tanks and stuff, making sure the filter was attached properly, and all this other stuff. And then finally this one kid came up and, he was handicapped, but he looks over at it, he opens up the fuel tank and points down inside the fuel tank, and they looked inside, it didn't have any fuel. So the whole time they were trying to repair this lawnmower, nobody bothered to actually check to see if it had fuel in it. And that was all that was wrong with it. Well, that was, I don't know if you'd want to call it a repair technique or a general mindset that I carried with me as I grew older, is that whenever there's a problem, you start by attempting to solve it at the simplest solution or the simplest way of looking at the problem first, and then work your way forward to the least likely cause of whatever is going wrong. And from a mechanical standpoint, that makes perfect sense. If you see a leak on your floor, you don't start by changing out your water heater, you go to the nearest pipe and then work your way back, right? And maybe check the roof. There's other ways than jumping to the most expensive or the most elaborate solutions to problems. So if you guys could guess anything about my personality, what kind of vehicles do you think I own? Obviously, I'm not going to tell you the exact vehicles, but what type, what kind? If you figured classic vehicles, you were dead on. 3 of my 4 vehicles are classics. They're all paid off and they're all in good condition. Matter of fact, they could all be sold for far more than I ever paid for them. I know driving around something that's 20 or 30 years old isn't always the most prestigious way to travel, and I've got an appreciation for the new muscle cars that are coming out these days. Some of them are really nice. But I don't like a vehicle that I can't work on, that I can't rebuild or repair. There is very little in my truck, for example, that I could not fix with actual duct tape. Furthermore, there's very little that I don't understand about it. Heck, you go back far enough, the vehicles were almost like Legos, they're interchangeable on some of their components. Now, obviously, that's not the case these days, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna have a vehicle tell me through the dashboard how I'm supposed to drive it. Screw that. I feel bad for when people try to go change their battery or something. They can't even get to it. You can't take it out without it damaging the electronic components in the vehicle. What is it, Prius that does that? They have them designed where you cannot even change the battery yourself. Picture for a moment having to hire an electrician to come in and change a light bulb in your home because they've made the fixtures too complicated. That is ridiculous. Really is the truth of the world these days, though. I mean, so many people are expected to go to a therapist for simple romantic issues because people can't talk nowadays. Or go to a police officer to handle a simple altercation rather than just duking it out like they did in the old days. I never advocate violence to any stretch of the imagination, but when it comes to solving simple problems, some people are just frickin' spoiled and need to get the crap kicked out of them once or twice. A whole new lot on life. Things simply don't work that way anymore. Anyway, to bring it back on topic, so what actually happened to me? Well, the fuel economy in one of my vehicles went to crap. I mean, it went bad. I was getting half as much mileage as I should. Most vehicles are designed to go, 300, 340 miles on a tank. and I was pushing 200 if I was lucky. And this happened fairly recently. Well, using my deductive logic, I started out with, thinking that it was bad fuel. Started putting additives in with it, removing any water, using some seafoam and stuff. Well, that didn't work, so I went into giving it a tune-up, figuring maybe it had bad spark plugs or wires. Changed those out. Didn't solve anything. Gas mileage was still garbage. Went into checking the codes on the vehicle, changing out oxygen sensors and stuff. Like, I went fairly far into this on my own before I finally broke down and went into a mechanic. I actually did find some things that were wrong with it, but they were all old issues that had been left in from like years ago that shouldn't have caused a recent problem. Well, naturally, all of this troubleshooting and mechanic work, it gets really expensive. I mean, even doing most of it myself, parts are not cheap. And then one day, almost by accident, I have an epiphany as I'm talking to this other person changing out their gas cap. I'm like, well, what's with the gas cap? I said, well, I need a locking gas cap because somebody keeps stealing my gas. And it hit me like a lead brick. So I got my own locking gas cap and my fuel economy has been normal ever since. So what's the point in this little story? Everybody has problems. We all deal with issues in our lives. Things go wrong, things break, stuff falls apart, and we adapt and overcome. The thing is, as men, we have a tendency to look at the situation mechanically and logically as opposed to emotionally or socially. And that's just in male nature. That's how it works. Now that can be extremely effective if something's actually wrong mechanically with whatever it is we're dealing with. This could be anything. Bills not getting paid, money getting lost somewhere, stuff going wrong in the household, issues in a relationship or a marriage. They all get addressed almost from a mechanical or direct perspective. And in some circumstances, that is the perfect response, is to break it down from its simplest problem and work your way forward. But we're dealing with a society here that is becoming more and more emotionally based. And I personally don't look at the human factor first, as in who could be causing this, who could be initiating the problem in the first place. Give a romantic example here. Say a guy is having issues paying his bills and, the family's just barely making it by. Rather than looking at ways to make more money or to save money, consider who might be spending it within the relationship, where the money's actually going. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, yeah, that's obvious, but there's also going to be a lot of people that'll say, yeah, you should have checked to see if someone was stealing your gas. My solutions in relationships were always very close to me. They were very mechanical in nature and addressed the problem from the simplest form forward. Meaning money problems get solved with money solutions. Probably more income is the first step. But it isn't really a solution whatsoever because the money's getting hemorrhaged out the side by somebody with a loose purse. It's just pumping air into a popped balloon. It's just going to flap around and not get any bigger. It did not matter how much money and effort and time and love I put into my truck. In fact, the more energy I put into that fuel, the harder I topped it off and paid attention to it, the faster it was drained. And I wouldn't call this a weakness of the male mind. It's a strength by any sense, but it really is a vulnerability that people who are close to us can take advantage of that mind frame. Especially, and I've spoken about this in several older videos, the concept of creating problems that don't really exist in order to siphon off that analytical energy, that effort that men put into solving things around them to the ends of whoever might be pulling the strings. So given the state of society, from now on, when I'm presented with a problem of some kind, I'm going to look at the human factors, if not first, at least equally, with the simplest mechanical solution or literal solution to a problem. Because there's a good possibility that there's someone there manipulating me or taking advantage of my efforts as opposed to actually there being a problem in the first place. If I had had that mindset when I was younger, when my relationships were falling apart at the seams, and everything was going wrong and I was fighting harder and harder to fix everything that was bad, that was just corrupted around me, if I had stopped and bothered to look at what the real problem was, She was staring me right in the face between those soft little eyes. You can almost think of it as a common sense, outside of the box approach to almost any situation. At least that's sort of how this scenario played out. Let me know what you think down below. When has your own drive or willpower to solve a problem been twisted against you? I see it every day when I'm going to work, or, in different college scenarios, for example, where people's hard work and effort for their degrees and for their promotions get twisted and just taken advantage of, where all their efforts just get siphoned off, and they don't really see the benefit of it, whereas the company is making 100-fold. Imagine designing something amazing for a company you're working for and not getting any of the patent money back from it. Not getting any of the rewards, just getting an hourly check. Has that ever happened to you? I know it's happened to me in different ways, more than I can count. I hope you've enjoyed this topic. Let me know what you think down below, and check out my channels in the description, the other platforms that I'm on, the ones with green check marks. If you want to hear more discussions like mine, like, share, and subscribe. This has been Marcel.